Hello everyone, this is Coach Jess. Welcome to 5x5 Basketball. This is the very first video on the channel. As you can see, opening day, middle of COVID 2020. What a year. If you want to see what these vids are about, head over to my channel. I'll be coming to you every week to wrap up, recap, and update you on the biggest news, standings, players, performances, and plays from the NBA. Starting with off-season news at number 5, number 8, number 24, and number 1 in our hearts. Kobe Bryant passed this year. Not technically off-season news, but I would be remiss not to acknowledge it in this first video. 2020 has been a horrible year. A lot of people have left us, among them Kobe, Gigi, and 7 others in a helicopter crash in Los Angeles. For what it's worth, this first video is dedicated to Kobe, one of the best to ever do it. At number 4, Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers have taken over as GM and coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, coming in immediately making some very interesting moves. We'll talk about them more in a little bit. At number 3, the man, the myth, the beard, James Harden has demanded a trade from the Houston Rockets. Russell Westbrook is already gone and Harden has been spotted out at strip clubs in the middle of COVID. Not a good look. At number 2, the Memphis City Zoo introduced Ja Morant to their new baby giraffe, Ja Raff.
Father's son for sure. His father's one of the biggest animals you've had too.
Nah, no I'm not. You do got my neck though. On God, son, don't blink. I was trying to get comfortable and also make sure Ja Raff was comfortable too. So, what's up, little bro? Woo! Oh, I ain't gonna lie, I dunk on you though. If I ever do the dunk contest, I'm taking my son with me. I'm gonna jump over.
At number 1, the first half of the schedule is released. There will be 72 games in total, a few more back-to-backs, and a few less 2-game weeks. If you have COVID, you're out for a minimum of 12 days. Roster sizes will go up from 13 to 15 to accommodate for this. There will be a play-in tournament for the 8th spot. Taking a look at a few key games here, we have on opening night Kevin Durant facing off against his former team, the Battle of LA. Then the next day, opening games for the Sixers and Wizards. Get to see Russell Westbrook in a new uniform. Then a possible Eastern Conference Finals matchup between the Bucks and Celtics. And most importantly, the Ball Bowl, January 9th, LaMelo versus Lonzo. Mark your calendars. Next up, we have the top 5 moves in the league this offseason, starting with Robert Covington to the Portland Trailblazers. Covington has one of the best reputations for a 3-and-D player in the league. He went 33% from 3 last year, but this was dragged down by his 22 games in Houston where they asked him to play ultra small ball center. He can guard all 5 positions and should fit really well next to Lillard and company. At number 4, we've got Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder going to the Lakers. They were 1 and 2 last year in bench scoring, can get you about 19 points per game each. We'll talk about them more later, but their defense and athleticism is very scary for the rest of the Western Conference. At number 3, the Rockets and Wizards swapped John Wall and Russell Westbrook. Westbrook will join Bradley Beal and the surprisingly deep Wizards roster to see if they can't make a run in the East. John Wall has looked healthy so far in the preseason, but with James Harden holding out and demanding a trade with the Rockets, this season might be for DeMarcus Cousins and Wall to reestablish themselves as starting quality NBA players. At number 2, we have Chris Paul joining the Phoenix Suns. The 35-year-old is a 10-time All-Star and played really well with a surprising Oklahoma City Thunder team last year. He had a 21.7 PER through 70 out of 72 games. He's still going strong and has a chance to take over for Ricky Rubio and push this Suns roster over the top. At number 1, what I would consider the most impactful move of the offseason is Drew Holiday to the Milwaukee Bucks. Always a borderline all-star, borderline all-defensive player, Drew Holiday is consistently underrated in the league. and has a chance to really push the Bucks over the top. Moving over to our top 5 rookies, starting with Cole Anthony, who lit it up in the preseason. Over 4 games, he dropped 55 points and tied with LaMelo for the most assists among rookies with 15. Cole Anthony's coming out of UNC, where he dropped 18, 5, and 4 on inefficient numbers, but can't argue with that. At number 4, we have James Wiseman, who's about to start his first NBA game after playing 3 games in college and none in the preseason. He has the body type of Joel Embiid, but it remains to be seen whether he can handle the physicality of the NBA. Big men are always liable to bust, but as a Northern California native, I have to say I'm looking forward to watching him work with Steph and the Warriors. At number 3, we've got number 1 overall pick Anthony Edwards. Looked very solid in the preseason, but it remains to be seen whether or not he can play the game at a high level mentally. His athleticism obviously is off the charts, but people are comparing him to other Timberwolves number 1 overall pick Andrew Wiggins. We'll see. I'm a believer.
Edwards, step back 3. Buries another one.
At number 2, we've got everybody's favorite sleeper Tyrese Halliburton out of Iowa State. His preseason numbers were pretty modest, but you can see in some of these highlights that he just makes winning plays. His jumper's a little funky, his legs are freakishly long, but he seems to have a head for the game, and we'll see what he does during the regular season. And at number 1, we have to slow down a little bit and talk about LaMelo Ball. Played last year in the Australian League, as we can see here, Lithuania before that. He's 6'8" with pretty good athleticism. The shooting has not been there so far, and his jumper is a little bit rough to look at. And more importantly, his defense is absolutely atrocious. I want to take a second and look at this play right here. LaMelo throws a very sloppy turnover, then comes back down into the corner here. Watch him go down to his knees and then kind of wobble. Very flat-footed, not that engaged. Lets his man right pass him for the offensive rebound, which I see all the time. I'm just not sure I'm a believer. Now, in the preseason, we can see stuff like this. Just beautiful. I'm not sure if that translates to the NBA at a high level. I'm not sure if he's the one you want running your offense. But as far as Charlotte goes, who just signed Gordon Hayward for a ton of money, this guy's going to sell you tickets. That's ridiculous.
What a pass by Ball. Leading Monk beautifully.
Moving into our last 2 sections here, we're going to take a look at 10 different teams. In this first group, we're going to look at 5 teams that are building, not necessarily rebuilding, but building up to something. The Atlanta Hawks have Nate McMillan taking over as coach. They added Bogdan Bogdanovic, as well as a healthy Clint Capella. This team has a lot of depth, especially at the wings. Be curious to find out if it's going to be DeAndre Hunter or Cam Reddish that takes the next step. They also have Onyeka Okongwu as a rookie. The Pelicans are in for a very interesting season if Zion Williamson can stay healthy. They lost Drew Holiday, but they did add Aquaman. The backcourt as is looking a little bit awkward, but JJ Redick off the bench should help smooth things out. If Ingram and Ball can take another step, this team has a lot of potential. And they also added the Dallas Mavericks roster is looking fairly similar except for Josh Richardson, who was scorching in the preseason, went to 11 for 15 from 3 and looked like he had immediate chemistry with Luka. Luka's coming off arguably the best 20-year-old season of all time, and if he keeps this up and Kristaps Porzingis gets healthy, the Mavericks are a problem. We mentioned that the 76ers added Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers to management. They also got Seth Curry back in that Josh Richardson deal. They added Danny Green as well for shooting around Embiid and Simmons. Even with the added shooting though, I've never seen a team where everything comes down to their main guy deciding to shoot threes or not. This saga has been going on for several years now, but if Ben Simmons can start to hit threes, this team is a dynasty. Last on our list of teams that are building is the Phoenix Suns. They added Chris Paul, which gives them a legitimate big three in Paul, Booker, and DeAndre Ayton. Their wing depth is a little bit questionable at the moment. They did lose Kelly Oubre to the Warriors. Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder are solid players, but I think they might miss the 18 points a game that Oubre gave them more than they think. Regardless, this is going to be a very fun League Pass team who has a chance at making some noise in the Western Conference. And finally, moving on to our final 5 teams. These are the true contenders. I didn't really want to put the Miami Heat on this list, but what can you do? They made the finals, arguably one of the most surprising teams to make the NBA Finals in the last 10-20 years. This roster is remarkably consistent from last year, except for switching out Jay Crowder for Maurice Harkless, who can protect the rim like this.
From behind, they're a defense-oriented team, number 1 in the league in points allowed.
The Brooklyn Nets are coming back with a basically brand new team composition, adding in a healthy Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They have a lot of depth. They also added Steve Nash in as head coach. Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert averaged over 22 points per game each when Kyrie Irving was not on the floor. Now that I'm releasing this video, I'm, I think, officially part of the media pawns that Kyrie Irving has been talking about. Keep an eye out for him to look at the stadium ceiling every once in a while when he's deep in thought. The LA Clippers were a little bit of a disappointment last year. Their offensive and defensive rating in the regular seasons were stellar. They had everything they needed to win, but it just didn't quite click together. This year, they have switched out Montrezl Harrell for Serge Ibaka, which might be a better fit with his three-point shooting. They did also steal back from the Lakers Ivica Zubac, who had a PER of 21 last year, never played more than 20 minutes a game in a season, but he's only 22, might be able to help him out down low. The Milwaukee Bucks added Drew Holiday, as we already talked about. They also failed to sign Bogdan Bogdanovic and actually lost a second-round pick for illegal recruiting. That means that Dante DiVincenzo has to start. That's a very strong defensive backcourt. Shout out to the Big Ragu, the only white boy in the league playing defense. And finally, they added Bobby Portis, a sneaky pickup and somebody who might have a legitimate shot at Sixth Man of the Year. Their backcourt is going to be a little bit shallow, but when you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're a contender. Last but not least, the defending champs. They added Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell, as we already talked about. They also added Marc Gasol, an excellent addition. If you give LeBron smart teammates, good things are going to happen. I'm going to end my takes here by saying that LeBron and AD is arguably the best duo of all time, and they will win another championship this year. Thanks so much for watching the very first video on my channel. Come back next week for a look back at the first week of the 2021 NBA season.